Analytics is a very different domain which I believe people are not able to understand, and that is why they are stuck in a salary range of very 6 to 15, 6 to 20, which they believe is good. But I believe it's not. There is a huge thing you can actually grow if you understand that it is business which you need to master. It's very, very niche, and it is very difficult if you have zero understanding of coding in your 4 years of college. If you've not done that, I don't suggest anyone to get into this domain because it's a very difficult thing to get into. And why I'm saying this with utmost sincerity, because I have seen people now who are CAs, who are completely from non-tech backgrounds, who are doing UPSC. And now, since they want to get into a job, right, there is such a buzzword around data science that people are just enrolling into courses,
Right.
not understanding that you need very detailed mathematics understanding.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we have Gaurav with us. So Gaurav is currently working with Walmart as a data scientist, and he has worked with Swiggy earlier. He was analytics manager there, and he has worked with some other bunch of startups. So today we will talk to Gaurav regarding one important thing that lot of people ask me nowadays. Like people have 4 years or 5 years or maybe 10 years of experience and they're into operations, non-tech or some other technology and they want to move into analytics, right? Or even for say there is a fresher, right? They are targeting data analytics roles. So we will discuss step by step how someone from non-tech or other tech can move into analytics. Okay. We will also know little bit about Gaurav's journey, how he moved from trade lines to data science at Walmart. Okay. So overall, you will get some idea in this video, in this podcast, that if you are planning to move into data analytics from any other domain, your roadmap should be. Okay. So Gaurav, over to you. You can tell about your journey little bit, and then we will move on. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Ankit, for having me. First of all, I think it's a pleasure connecting with you, seeing you over LinkedIn for a long time. I've been following you, right, and just to share a screen with you now, I think it's really a great pleasure for me. So yeah, I'll share my thoughts definitely on the topics that you've mentioned. I'll just start with a very brief intro about myself. Uh, my name is Gaurav, as Ankit mentioned. My total span of career is around 6.5 years now. And I recently moved to Walmart as a senior data scientist just 6 months back. Before that, I was working with Swiggy. And out of the 6 years, my predominant part that I've spent, right, around 50% of my career has been into Swiggy. There I started off around 2019 from a position of business analyst, climbed the ladders with two promotions to analytics manager. And I'll probably brief a little more into Swiggy at a later point of time because I believe that was the turning point in my career. I think everyone's career there comes one company, one manager, a few set of people who just changed a direction for your growth. For me, that happened in Swiggy. Now probably it's happening now as well. Uh, so that was more around my career journey and all that. And I probably started at a very similar level as to what I see with very a lot of people over LinkedIn who were trying to get into analytics as the very first company. Uh, in my college, I got graduated in 2017, and there came Mu Sigma, which I failed to get into. So, and just like any other person, I got selected into TCS Infosys. At that time, I was very naive, so I don't used to consider these companies as very good. I will take my words back now. I don't see it that way. But that time, you're just 20 something. You don't understand a lot. You come from a family where all you see is how do you earn a lot more, right? That's the only thing that is in your head. So for me, it was very simple. That how do I break the chains to earn a very good salary? And all my friends were into ITs and ITs, so I knew that it is either software development, so you become very good with DSA, uh, or there was a buzzword that was growing around at that point of time, which was machine learning and data science and analytics. So I tried my hands into all of these during my last 1.5 years in college. I did so many questions of DSA. Probably interview bit was one of the sites which I would use to open, try. After some time, I would feel that I've just forgotten everything, and eventually I figured out that DSA is not for me. So I closed the DSA chapter, and then finally, after some thoughts, I felt okay. Let's do something around machine learning. So my journey started with that. And typically it started with very basic stuff, right? Starting with very basic machine learning models. And what I loved was that I was able to see that something is coming up. So I built a very basic regression model, and I was able to see that okay, something is being done. Yeah, a very basic housing price prediction model, right? You are just copying from someone else, but you feel that okay, you are also learning. Eventually, it wasn't the case. That I realized at a later point of time that I wasn't learning in depth. I was just learning the overview of things, which wasn't very helpful or fruitful. But those were the starting point for me. And the journey was, how do I get into analytics? Even though have not got into music much. So how do I make my off-campus first job out of the campus into analytics industry? And my journey was typically from there on. So I was lucky enough to get one internship into the company Implay Analytics, which eventually gave me the full-time opportunity there as well. And from there on, I stayed there for around 9 months. Moved to Tredence, which is a very similar company as to what Mu Sigma does. There I stayed for around 1.5 years and then moved to Swiggy. So this journey was more around service-based company to product-based company, and then figuring out what are the different paths that I can explore into analytics within Swiggy. So it could be product management, it could be data science, it could be continuing up the ladder into analytics. And then eventually I recently then moved to Walmart as a data into a senior data scientist position. So yeah, that's a bit about myself, probably on that part.
That's great, Gaurav, for sharing your journey. Also, I feel like the moment you started getting, interest in something, you have that curiosity to learn, right? Maybe when you were learning DSA, maybe if you would have seen some business use case, you would have got that curiosity and you would have gone with that career. You never know. It is all
Mhm.
about getting that little bit of interest, and then you then pick it up, right? So it doesn't
Rightly.
matter which domain you are going. It is just about getting that interest, and then you will build it up, right? Yeah, rightly said. Yeah.
Perfectly. I think I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
So I think an interest for me was more around business. I think what I loved the part was I was more of a business person, and I had a lot of interest into mathematics and all that stuff. But business was the driving force for me. So I would always try to think from business perspective, even at a very early stage in my career. That was the intriguing part. So how is that decision being made? Was my question to answer. Was it with respect to a model? Was it with respect to a basic stuff that I would do or perform in through analytics or something else? But the decision, how things are happening at the back end, was something very intriguing to me. So my link started happening with the thought that in my first company, when I started seeing okay how actually your work is getting represented, how people are taking decisions based on that. Those were, I think, some of the pointers which where you started taking two steps back. You started understanding okay, this is how organizations function. It's all about, eventually in analytics, it's all about how you help business take decisions. That is what it is all about. It's not about the fancy stuff that I was earlier trying to build, the fancy ML models and all of that part. That's a very different game altogether. So those type of learning, probably I think it's all about interest. And then once you develop this interest part, you will eventually find out some or the other way through someone. It could be any different way that come along, right? But yeah, I think to your point, definitely, I think interest will definitely play a good role in moving forward.
And a good point about the business also. I feel that technical roles, SDs, and the data roles. The main difference is in data roles, you should have good business knowledge as well, right? Because you are playing with data. If you know something about business, how is the data, what it represents, this column, it's a different story altogether. In SD roles, you have to develop something, right? You have some that you have to build this product, right? That's it. But
Definitely.
data analytics, you have to have some business knowledge. That will give you upper hand, definitely. That I have realized.
Very much. I think I'll give you one example. So in Swiggy, when you had some project, right? So when you stayed in an organization for quite some time, you get a very good sense check of metrics. I know that this is the number, it is in this range. So whenever you do something like this, right? So when I have one of my peers doing something and I'm trying to observe that, because I already am aware of a lot of things in the business, I know whether this is right or wrong. That kind of understanding, when you develop a very good hand on business, that kind of understanding is always appreciated by stakeholders,
Right.
because that is what they need, right? That eventually, when I am taking a decision of some experiment, let's say at Swiggy, and that is impacting so much of revenue into that decision. So whether this product should be launched or not is a decision which will be backed by data. and you are responsible for it, and the millions of dollars are being dependent based on your decision. You become very, very careful of what you are doing and what you are trying to convey from the data points. I think that realization is very good, and I think that happens a lot. uh, what I've seen around product companies is pretty well. For my case, that happened a lot. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Gaurav, let's talk about 2 points now. One is, let's talk about first that, let's say some college graduate is there, right? Now they have a lot of options. They can go into software development engineering, learn DSA, or they want to go into analytics, right? So what should they do to get their first job? And after that, we will see if someone is experienced in some other domain or in non-tech, right, in banking center or operations, how they can move into analytics, right? So,
Sure.
so let's say I'm a fresher graduate. I'm graduating this year. What should I do to get my first job in analytics?
So probably I'll try to break it this way. Depends from what your core subjects are. And I'll take an example. Let's say I am from a computer science background. I'm currently in my last year. Now, I am expecting that since you are from computer science, you might have very basic idea of, let's say, Python or SQL, right? So you already have that knowledge. So one is, let's try to categorize different types of students, and you might create a different strategy for each one of them. What worked for me was that I never started with SQL. I
Hmm.
started with Python because I had developed something in my college through Python. I was trying to code a lot in Python. So here is the thing, right? You have to pick the thing which you might be good at. So if you are from computer science, you might have some understanding of Python or SQL, or very basic of, let's say, Excel. It might happen, right? If you are coming from a very different finance background, then Excel might be the thing that you might be working a lot on. So probably the aim that, let's say, any company that you're trying to get into analytics domain us is typically looking into three four things. One is, you have to be very good with SQL. SQL is the go-to factor, and the reason is as simple as this, right? Imagine company like Amazon or Swiggy. The amount of data that they are collecting in a minute is huge, that you can't even imagine that part. Now, I am someone, if I'm trying to enter into the domain, right? My first job is to get the data and then do some analysis out of it, or build some ML model, or do some Power BI dashboarding. But first, I need to get the data out. So all of these top product companies need you to be a master of SQL.
Right.
Now, at an entry level, your thing should be that you need to have very good understanding of some very important concepts. That's it. That's in the interview. This is going to happen. You'll be asked, you'll be grilled on Windows function, you'll be grilled on, how partition works, row number, instance, lag, all of these functions. So if I master these things, my SQL is sorted. Then comes the interesting part. If I break companies into, let's say, product companies and service companies, you will find two different types of work that is happening recently.
Hmm.
In companies like, let's say, Swiggy, Mintra, Flipkart, Amazon, every other company, you pick a role. Mostly it is called as business analyst. In Mintra, they tag you as a data analyst, but it's exactly the same thing.
Okay.
What they really need in their job description is, you have to be very good with SQL. Then you need to be very good with problem solving. So
Hmm.
problem solving is the way in which you break a problem into different subparts and eventually come to a conclusion that this is how I will try to derive the solution from it. For
Okay.
example, let's say I ask you, or let's say this is what has happened, right? Flipkart's big billion day sale is coming, or Amazon's big billion days sale is coming, right? So I want to understand, in case my orders of the first day do not go as planned as what my forecast was,
Hmm.
right? And I want to do an RC of it. Why my orders have fallen down by 20% from last year comparison? That is the first day's orders that you have, right? Now, how do you give an RCA to your stakeholders to help them understand, particularly which sector or which segment they should try to improve? So that is what you are expected out of it, right? So I break this problem into smaller chunks, and then when I break this problem, I help them prioritize. Since this chunk is probably the biggest chunk where I can make the most impact on. So I
Right.
understand the problem, I break the problem, and I tell them, look, this is what we can try to improve. And that is the thinking that they are trying to help, right? So as a fresher, I will understand that since you do not have a lot of business understanding, you might not be very good with it, but you have to develop this art by solving a lot of guess estimates. how many number of Uber cars are there in Bangalore at this point of time, or total number of burgers that McD would sell, right? So that type of thinking will help you develop this art of problem solving. So SQL and problem solving is the game for cracking an interview. Before cracking an interview, you need to have a very good product, and your product is your resume.
Right.
If your resume, and I say this to everyone, right? Your resume is your product, and you need to sell your product. And how do you do that? You need to stand outside among the rest of the crowd. When everyone is doing the same COVID-19 analysis or storefront stores analysis, right? Your resume doesn't look very different.
Right.
So it has to showcase different types of project, the variety, right? More than certificates. I need to understand as a manager, if I'm an analytics manager, I need to see that look, if you are saying that you've learned a skill, you can showcase it through a project. If you've learned Tableau or Power BI, add a link to the dashboard that you've published. Now it
Right.
gives me a lot more credibility that look, so and so person has actually learned something. And I'll probably go through that link when this resume gets shortlisted. So your resume has to be very, very good. Like I see so many resumes on my LinkedIn asking for referrals. But when I open it, I clearly know that this will not get shortlisted. The reason is as simple. You are amongst the same crowd where in India where there are for a job, a single job, right? You know it. You will have thousands of applicants within a minute.
Right.
So how do you become different? How do you stand amongst the crowd? It is the project. So pick different variety of project. It could be one could be about dashboarding. One could be about let's say very basic ML project that you can do. You can avoid ML as well. I'll say I'll avoid ML. I didn't when I was graduating, but I could avoid ML as of for now. So one could be about storytelling. One could be about your showcasing that you've learned dashboarding. Other could be pure play, entirely analytical solution. It could be around pricing. It could be around customer segmentation, and it need not be ML model. When I say customer segmentation, it could be heuristic.
Right.
It could be an approach where you break down different sets of customers, and then the most important part is that your project has to have an outcome. What are you trying to derive out of it? So a project is simple. There is a problem statement. There is something that you've done. So you've used a tool to present the solution. But then the question is, what have you derived out of it? So I see this very commonly. I've built, let's say someone mentions I built a segmentation with 80% accuracy. So what? So what? What do we do with your 80% accuracy segmentation model? Eventually, it has to help the organization in some way. So there has to be some metric which has to move for the organization. So when you do automation, the way you are helping the organization is by saving the bandwidth of people. You saved man hours. You saved team hours. I will not say man or woman hours. Probably we'll say on that. So you are saving something, right? So it has to have that output metric as to what you are saving.
Right.
How is it helping the organization? So when you think around that, any problem that you pick, you have to give some suggestion at the end of it from your insights. So you've derived some, let's say 5 insights. Then what are you recommending? There has to be 1 or 2 recommendations. So that gives a full-fledged idea that okay, you have understood how problem solving happens. You understand how things flow in a particular direction, and that is a very good way of presenting your solution.
Right.
So in realistically, any problem that I solve just can't be insights. It has to have something to take action upon. And that action could be when you are doing, let's say, some experimentation in Swiggy. It need not be that every time the experimentation will give you a fruitful result. You will come out and say that, look, you can't run this experimentation because this will have a very negative impact. And it's okay. It's also a very positive answer. It's not a negative answer. Knowing that you don't need to do this
Exactly.
because it will cause some
loss.
system to
Yes.
flow out. So you don't do that.
Yeah.
Right? And as an analyst, this is what is expected out of you, that you say no to the stakeholders when things are not in the right direction.
Right.
I think that's my idea of getting into product companies. The companies that I'm mentioning is let's say Myntra, Flipkart, Amazon, Swiggy, PhonePe, Navi. All of these companies are predominantly looking into these 2 skills because they understand that at a fresher level, they can train you on Python or Power BI, right? Tools are not very big deal. If you've learned one let's say you've mastered SQL pretty good, you will learn Python very easily. You will be able to think through that, right? Doing the same thing in Excel won't take you a lot of time. So
Exactly.
that's what they think at a very fresher level. communication has to be little decent. I believe when I say communication, it's more like, are you able to share the thought in the right way? It's not about English. Predominantly in Indian startups, I think you can talk in Hindi very fluently. I think in Swiggy that happens at a very easy way. Uh, at Amazon, when you are dealing with US clients, you might have to be very good with the communication part. So you have to have that basic communication where you can convey what you're trying to in an ease. That's important, because you will be dealing with stakeholders, and predominantly in service based companies, all the stakeholders are either US based or different country based, right? So you can't connect within Hindi, right? So English has to be little decent, I'll say. Communication has to be good. These are the three skills I predominantly believe in. If you want to get into top product companies, that's it. That's what you need. A good product, which is your resume. Add very decent projects, 2 3 projects into different varieties. Have a very solid understanding of SQL, right? And then it's about problem solving. Problem solving is what I believe will become the game changer, because now with so many uh, people, right, you can learn the technical part pretty easily. But when you've not solved the real things in business, it's difficult to understand how business functions. Because I haven't solved how Swiggy works. I don't know how phone pay works. So how do I do that? And
Right.
my suggestion to everyone is, you have the apps, right? So when you see a notification from Zomato or Swiggy, think about what is happening. Your
Hmm.
data, because you have not ordered from Zomato from the last 2 weeks, Zomato is using this data. They are calling you as a dormant customer.
Right.
And this data, they are giving you a notification that, look, come and order and we'll give you 50% off. So you have
Exactly.
to start thinking in that direction. When you start thinking to all the apps that you are using, you'll start developing some ideas, some hinges, and you need to be very curious. I think one of the skills which I'll recommend to everyone, right? When I say something to you, don't just understand. If you have a question, ask. Be
Right.
curious to know more, little more, because it is curiosity that will help you think a lot more. If
Right.
you're not curious, it's simply like I've told you something. Ankit has told me how SQL works. I know it. But if I ask a little deep to Ankit, he might tell me something that he's worked on
Right.
Amazon, which might help me. So try to get into a little depth. I believe that is very important now, and that's my idea of getting into, I think, product based companies. But if you take or talk about service based companies, probably there is a different angle that I'm seeing recently that is getting added. So most of the service-based companies, the majority of work is around dashboarding,
Hmm.
because most of the clients that you have, they are giving you, they are starting out with their analytics journey. Right, data is just getting started there. The first thing is you need to create a layer of reporting dashboards.
Hmm.
Now, when I joined Swiggy, let's say in 2019, around 2018-19, the dashboarding task was almost done. Right, when the
Okay.
organization is growing, you'll first create dashboards, and once you've created dashboards, then there isn't a lot to add on to those dashboards. There will be obviously some or the other changes that will happen, keep on happening. But then the different type of work starts happening. So you are creating something around segmentation, something around demand planning, dormancy. You are solving different problems, pricing problems. But what I am observing now in most of the service based companies, there is one major task is around Power BI or dashboarding. And that is a good scope to enter right now, because as Power BI is growing, you might easily enter into these companies also, right? So don't block your work around, let's say, only product companies. You can also make a transition to service based companies first. There's
Great.
nothing wrong. It's equally good. Get into there. For there, I think you need to learn Power BI relatively better. Uh, where I might at Swiggy, I might not ask you whether you know Power BI or not, right? At a fresher level, I will might ask you how to design a dashboard. That is more around your thinking part. There, you might be grilled around different types of questions on Power BI also. That is also happening. So maybe you should also learn Power BI. That's another tool, right? So in terms of tools, if you talk about, it is SQL, Power BI, or Tableau. Pick anyone. Excel and Python. That's all about analytics. So for service-based companies, I'll probably pick Power BI in the current market scenario, seeing how things are opening up for them. Might be, I think it will open a lot more doors for me, and I'll create two strategies for myself. How do I segregate these two companies, right? Probably, and both are good. I'll say both are good. I think there's everyone has their own pros and cons. So I'll probably not differentiate between that.
Okay. Great, Gaurav. I think it's a good roadmap that, right? Now one question is like, if someone is from non-CS graduating, right? Like I did my engineering in electronics and communication, right? I by chance, moved into data, but let's say someone is targeting, right, some companies. So how they should approach? Like, should they learn SQL first? Should they learn Python or Power BI? What should be the strategy?
So
I don't know coding because I'm from electronics communication or mechanical engineering or electrical engineering, right? So what should be the
yeah.
approach?
So this is how probably, let's say you are completely from a non-tech background, you have no understanding of any of the coding languages.
Right.
The way I might start, if I'm in their shoes, I will probably start with Excel.
Okay.
Reason being, Excel is something which I already have in my system, very easily downloadable, right? And you don't need huge sets of data. You can start with very basic data set, and I'll start prioritizing topics. So
Hmm.
I will learn. I'll not try to learn everything. I'll pick topics which are mostly important, which are to be used. So in Excel, how do I create insights, right? And the first thing might be you need to create some pivots, some very basic charts, and from that I can understand. Okay, this is what I'm trying to infer from this data set.
Right.
So that link will help me understand, okay, how VLOOKUP happens, how pivot happens, how do you create basic charts, right? How do you present this in a form of a story? That is what I'll try to learn at a very basic level, and then probably I'll jump onto SQL.
Okay.
I'll not learn everything in Excel. I'll
Hmm.
just try to understand, okay, how data is structured, how do I do the very basic stuff about storytelling, and I'll move to SQL. Because SQL, again, I'm saying it is, you can't get into good companies without SQL. So you have to learn SQL for sure. That is the language. And when you learn, and I'll try to master SQL as much as possible. I'll not master Excel, I'll not master Python. I'll master SQL. Because once I start thinking in SQL, I'll tell you that learning Python won't take a lot of effort and time. It will be very easy. And you will see the same thing in Excel, right? Whatever you are doing in SQL, you might be doing the same thing in Excel also,
Right.
right? It's just the different types of function, right? All I'm doing is I'm applying a function in SQL first. I will Google it and try to learn how to apply the same function in Excel. I'll Google it and apply the same function in Python. It's just the left join in SQL, and you will have a merge function in Python. That is
Right.
the only difference, right?
Right.
You are using union all in SQL, and you will just concat or append the data set in Python.
Right.
So understanding that it is not the tool that will help you grow. Master one tool very effectively, pick SQL. I'll always say SQL. I am saying that you should start with Excel because since you don't have any understanding of anything, right? You're just starting as a fresher in coding. Pick Excel. It is relatively easy. You'll have very limited data set, so you can even scroll and understand. Okay, this is what the data set is. You can verify a lot more detail, right? There is lesser chances of getting error. That will be very basic stuff, and then pick SQL. Master the most important concepts that you have. Go to probably Excel back. Go back to Excel. Start using SQL and Excel and start creating projects,
Hmm.
and start driving insights and action from it. Take Power BI, then start building dashboards. Right now, you can connect all of these three layers. Then
Right.
eventually, I'll move to Python.
Right.
I'll pick very basics of ML algorithms if I have time. I'll try to understand how experimentations work. All of those things, very basic details of stats, not a lot of detail, right? Because as fresher, what I have observed is people generally tend to get lost among tools. So
Right.
you are learning SQL, then you are learning Python, and you are learning Excel, Power BI, everything. You will be lost because there is so much to learn that you will eventually feel that, okay, you don't know whatever you learned in SQL 3 months back. You are back to zero. This happens a lot, and it happens to me probably. I haven't used, so if I have not used when I became analytics manager in Swiggy. So there the role became a little different. You are now 50% or 60% only hands on. You are managing a team. So now
Hmm.
when you are not doing hands on, I am not coding in Python anymore. So if I'm not coding in Python, I ask my manager, that I feel that I'm not able to, I feel that I'm losing out on writing codes, and I just am not able to digest that fact that I might find it difficult if I eventually try to move on. And I was just 6 years into my career, right? So into a managerial role. So for me, that was a little difficult to digest. That, okay, if you are not hands on, you'll forget things, and
Right.
it will happen to anyone.
Right.
All I'll do is I'll probably use Google because I know, okay, at max I understand how much. that there is a merge function, right? I might not understand what is the syntax of this merge function.
Right.
At times I've forgotten how do you create a data frame because if I'm not used for 6 months, I will not remember that. But I know there is something called as a data frame, so I simply Google. The point that I'm trying to highlight is that it is not tools, it is not Python.
Right.
Analytics is a very different domain which I believe people are not able to understand, and that is why they are stuck in a salary range of very 6 to 15, 6 to 20, which they believe is good. But I believe it's not. There is a huge thing you can actually grow if you understand that it is business which you need to master. If you master that, your growth will happen. If you see how pyramid works in any industry, right? At a point of time, you will not be writing codes,
Hmm.
right? If you become an IC, how long will you become an IC in analytics? Very few companies have this IC role in analytics.
Right. Right.
So either you become manager or you become a business guy where you become, okay, now you're helping business solve the problem. So you think from that angle, and that is where the growth happens.
Right.
And every salary, if you take any wise, right, on salary perspective or on growth on different companies, I think that growth is very fast that I have seen with so many of my peers who are climbing onto that ladder. Or you try getting into, let's say, product or data science onto that type of roles. That is also a very different game that you can start playing.
Right.
But yeah, to your
Actually,
question, probably, yeah,
actually, I have also seen like nowadays, lot of freshers they are directly, preparing for data science roles, machine learning, this, that. They are doing courses from some, organization, 1 lakh, 2 lakh courses, and they are teaching them everything from Excel, Python, SQL, machine learning, this, statics, this, that. But I think it is not required. If you just learn two, three things properly, Excel, SQL, Power BI, for freshers, I think these three things are good. If you are good in these three things, some projects you have done, you can get a job. The problem is people don't learn properly these things, and they will say
yes,
that we are not getting jobs. You will not get it. You have to learn one or two things, but strong, right?
very
So
completely agree on that part. I think
you can't
it's more
learn
about
those 10 things as a fresher. First of all, it will not make sense to you at all.
actually it's very nicely said, right? When you learn too many things, you will not be able to relate to a lot of things around that, right? Why you are learning that?
Right,
Pick lesser things, as you are saying, master those lesser things. And for analytics, right? So I'll differentiate between analytics and data science. Data science, I believe, is very, very niche, and it is very difficult if you have zero understanding of coding in your 4 years of college. If you've not done that, I don't suggest anyone to get into this domain because it's a very difficult thing to get into. And why I'm saying this, I'm saying this with utmost sincerity because I have seen people now uh, who are CAs, who are completely from non-tech backgrounds, who are doing UPSC. And now, since they want to get into a job, right, there is such a buzzword around data science that people are just enrolling into courses,
right,
not understanding that you need very detailed mathematics understanding, linear
right,
algebra, all of those concepts will be needed and it will take a lot of time. If you don't have time, if you're not into, let's say, third year of your college, probably if I am into third year, I'll take that time. I'll try it out. What happens to these people who are looking for job at a very faster pace is that they've already spent 2 3 years for government jobs,
right,
and since they haven't gotten that job, they are little frustrated. Now when they pick data science, which will take around 1.5 years to actually learn something, they'll again become frustrated because if you miss something, you will be in that loop.
right,
That is why I say that probably pick analytics, which is a little easier. It might have lesser salary, it's okay,
right.
but you should also think that there is an entry to barrier also.
Hmm.
In Swiggy, there are only 30 data science scientists. There are 120 analysts.
Exactly.
There is a difference in salary. I completely agree. But then there is an entry barrier also which I should understand. And if I'm targeting for that 30 jobs, then I am my proportion is so different. So
Right.
I will always take this factor also. Right? Data science is very, very different game. You
Hmm.
can become a data scientist by getting into analytics also. Be there in analytics, spend some couple of years, get some ML projects, show your manager that you are very much interested into this domain. Every company gets some or the other ML project.
Right. Right.
Try to learn, or you meet people in Amazon. There will be one data scientist. Right? Try to connect with them.
As
That
far
is
as
my
I know, whatever data scientists I know, they were into analytics at some point and then moved into data science, right? No one started as a data science, candidate. No one starts data science into analytics first. They get some idea what is analytics. then they move into data science. I think that's the pattern. Great, Gaurav. So Gaurav, last point, like this is very important one, right? A lot of people are into the industry, right? 5 years experience, 8 years. They are into non-tech, operations, banking, different kinds of domain. Now, what should they do? Because they have this baggage of 8 years of experience, right? How do they justify, right, to get an analytics job?
Okay, so let's say you are someone who has a good amount of experience, 6 7 8 years of experience, but let's say into sales or operations or something else, and now you're trying to make a transition,
Right.
right? uh, maybe you are also trying to refer to people who are, let's say, working as system engineers in TCS
Maybe.
or
Right.
Infosys. All of these people, let's say
Right.
you have some understanding of how things work, right? And this is what I'll say: majority of these people believe that they do not have enough understanding of what analytics is and all of those things, right? But this is what I want them to think first. You have spent good amount of time in the industry, be it as a system engineer in TCS, or working as a sales professional, or working as an operations guy, right? You understand how business works. You understand how to deal with stakeholders. Those are two things which are actually needed into analytics. You've
Agree.
improved on those skills, right? Now the process remains the same. You have to learn tools. You have to master SQL. You can't get away with it. You have to become very good with problem solving part if you're tying these good companies, right? And since you already have some job, right? You have some basic salary. So I think you should target more into product based companies because that will match your salary expectation also. So for them, the idea is very simple: master SQL. Without it, you won't get into it, right? You have to have a very good problem solving capability. And then from the past work that you have done, don't say that, I haven't done anything about SQL or I haven't learned anything about Python or something. It's okay. You haven't learned about that. It doesn't really matter. But you know how to deal with stakeholders. You know how problems actually work. An operations guy at Swiggy understand how operations work in Swiggy very well. He has
Right.
much more idea of those knowledge. Now in
Mm,
Swiggy, there is an analytics team which deals with delivery operations.
mm,
You could be a very good candidate for it
right.
because you know how the business works in operation. So you need to showcase those type of projects which will highlight these skills, your business acumen and your stakeholder management part, right? So try to add something around that part.
Mm,
Showcase that your past experience is actually beneficial for the organizations.
mm, right.
This is very important. Now, this will give you an upper edge as compared to any fresher in the industry. You are
Right.
not making a fresh start. You are making a start with some experience. And then here you have to add projects which will be a little more in depth. It can't be very naive, it can't be very basic. That
Mm,
has to be showcased.
right.
If you could do all these three, four things that we've discussed, then making a transition is not that difficult. We have selected candidates who have done similar type of work and have made a cross in Swiggy. I know about that person. I have my friend who was into TCS
Mm,
3 years back.
mm,
We worked with her and she made an easy transition like that.
great.
All of these companies will simply focus on two things in your interview: SQL, problem solving, case studies.
Right.
They are just judging you, and you have to just highlight, okay, you have a very clear reason why you want to make a switch, right? It's very easy conveyable. Add the positives that you've learned in these companies for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. A
Right.
lot of people know SQL also. A lot of these people will know some or the other thing. They will be able to match it up. Someone will be very good with communication.
Right.
Someone in operations might understand how problem solving works because he's solved problems at the ground level.
Exactly. Exactly.
So use your past as a tool which is more to strengthen you, and I think you'll get an advantage of it.
Right.
A lot of people who come out to me with the same concept, they are always trying to say that, I have a very different background. It's so negative for me. I say that, look, you need to see in a very different way. It is actually positive to you.
Right.
You just
Right.
need to convey this as a story where it showcases that it is very positive to you.
Right.
It's all about the perspective that you create.
Right.
For
Right.
me,
Rightly
if
said.
you'll tell me a positive perspective, I'll take that. You
Mm,
just need to connect those dots in a positive format,
right.
and it will work.
Right. And just to add two more points, Gaurav, like mostly who are in operations, right? Sales or banking, they know Excel already. They are working with
Mm.
Excel day in, day out, and they are pretty good in Excel already because they have worked 5 years, 6 years, day in, day out on Excel, right? So they don't have to start from scratch. They think they have to start from scratch, but that's not the case, right? They know analytics already, but they don't know that they know, as you said, right? And secondly, what also they can do is whatever work they are doing till today in Excel, right? They can think about it how to create a portfolio project out of it using Power BI or SQL or whatever tools they are learning, right? So the journey is easy for them. It is just that they have to go in little more depth because they have some
Mm.
experience. That is the only difference. Otherwise, it is very intuitive for them as well, right?
Rightly said. So if you take this example, right? So I'll say there's operations guy, there is something called as MIS analyst or reporting analyst. Now
Hmm.
they happen to have, we have it in Swiggy, we have it in Amazon, everywhere they are there. And their salary range is pretty low. And
Hmm.
I have always had this question as to why these people don't really try to make a switch into proper analytics role. And the major missing factor is that they can do things. They can build an Excel dashboard. They can even write basic SQL query also. Where they find a difficulty is they don't connect the dots of how things are working. They often feel they are more doers. So
Hmm.
it is the depth that they need to understand. And I'll say this is what you should do. Whatever work you are doing, sit, take it back with your managers or people you are working with. Let's say, as an MIS analyst, you might be connecting with a business analyst who will be guiding you as to why he needs this dashboard. You have created a dashboard for them. Right?
Right.
Now understand how this dashboard is driving decisions. This is
Right.
the link that you need to understand.
Hmm.
Once you understood this part, you will connect the dots, okay, how things are working. So you are no more an individual who can only create things, or you can run an Excel query or an SQL query. You need to go beyond two steps, how business works. So take, I think, start with this, where you start connecting with people, understanding how things are working. And I think that is something which will be not that easy, right? Because you have so much of work that I've seen, they are generally under huge pressure of huge amount of work. So it's mostly ad hoc requests that they get. You need to pull this data as quickly as possible. So there is no breathing space that you have to understand what is happening. And that is the extra effort that you'll have to do, right? Take a Saturday, start with two projects that you've done last 2 weeks. Why you did that?
Hmm.
Why you did that? And when you've done it in Excel, right? All you need to do is do the same thing in Python or do the same thing in SQL. So you learn that those tools also parallelly. That is the best way of learning, I believe.
Right, right. And I
Probably
think
we'll start
who
with
are in
some of
other domains, they should target that domain also in analytics, right? That will help them, right? If someone in operations and targeting sales own role in analytics, it will be difficult. But if he's targeting some operations analytics role, it will be easier for him, right?
Yeah, predominantly I think it will be mostly based on the type of project that you are showcasing. So once your product, which is your resume, showcases that you are more into operations,
Hmm.
companies will definitely select you, giving you a weightage for your business understanding of operations. And
Right.
that will be an upper hand for you. And even I think business plays a very crucial role for your doing a very good work,
Hmm.
right? When I stayed around after 2.5 years at Swiggy, I would have understood a lot more thing than when I was at 1 year at Swiggy. Right
Hmm.
now, when I'm at just 6 months at Walmart, I know very little.
Right.
Because so when you understand the business, you will have a lot of hypotheses just flowing into your head very easily, because you
Right.
understand, okay, this is how things work. Now since I don't know that part, I will have to first learn that business in the
Hmm.
first 6 7 8 months, right? And organizations will definitely give you an edge if you've already done that part. So you've been an operations person at Swiggy as an MIS analyst. Why not Zomato, or why not any other Flipkart operation team will give you an edge if you're trying to get into business analyst part. All you need to do is present that story, that you are now good at business, you are good at problem solving, and you have mastered one tool, which is SQL. And within that tool, also, you don't need to know everything. Very plain, simple things at a very in depth level. That when I give you a question, you are able to solve. That's
Hmm.
it. That I think that is the part which I think people should focus more. Less tools,
Whole business.
more business, and doing same thing again and again repetitively. So
Right.
master the tool, master SQL.
Right.
Pick one tool, pick lesser tools, and master it to them, and then probably move to newer ones. Because as freshers, as someone who was naive, if I take my story, I was so naive that I was learning Python and R at the same time. I didn't even know that both are the same scripting language and both will do the same thing. So I don't need to learn R also. So I took up data camp R course also. I took up data camp Python course, and I was doing everything. कि जैसे भी जॉब लगे मुझे जॉब चाहिए. अब मुझे पता ही नहीं है क्या करना है. Now after spending 6.5 years, I can say that use your time very precisely. Because what happens is we become frustrated very early, right? If I have 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, and I'm jobless after my 4 years of graduation, there will be something which will hit me after a year.
Right.
So I need to ensure that I am in the right track. And 3 4 months, I think for analytics, I'll say that if you have nothing, if you're starting from scratch, 6 months is a very good time frame where you can do wonders and you can turn your story around. So give yourself some time. Don't be impatient. Uh, right, that is very important, because if you become impatient, then things will definitely miss. Right, I see so many people, just simply messaging, "Can you please find a job for me?" How can I find a job for you? This is your job, right? I can at max give you a referral if there is an opening, but you have to do that job, right? So you have to sit with your laptop open first 2 hours, applying everywhere, and same for the last 2 hours. That is how I used to do things for me. My first 2 hours and my last 2 hours were fixed. I will just apply everywhere, any site, any website that I have. I will do that job. In between, I'll try to learn something. You have to build a strategy, and you have to just follow that strategy for a good amount of period. The same old boring stuff that will get you succeeded. Don't get into the fancy
Have that
stuff.
belief that if I do this, I will get a job. If you don't have that belief, then you will start looking for other things, this, that. If you know by learning SQL, Excel, and doing good projects, I will get a job, and to stick to it, you will get it. But if you are
Very
not,
easy.
if you are not, cannot make yourself believe, then it's difficult.
Yeah, I think hope is very important. Right? You need to be hopeful.
Right.
There will definitely be times when you will feel so frustrated. In my case, it used to happen that I have applied for companies and it's just not happening. So the first phase will be where you will see rejections because your resume is not good. Now it is up to you how you understand that part, right? So when I have applied for 20 companies and nowhere I'm getting selected, and that time the market was open. So I have to understand that there is something wrong in my resume, right? It's just not that the market is not right, or it's just that people are not selecting me. So I have to reflect back and make those corrections. I have to improvise again. Now when I do it, let's say now my resume is better. Now comes the second phase where you will get calls and you will not be able to clear it. So the first thing is you are not able to explain the projects well, or the SQL questions are coming and I'm not able to solve it, right? Or I know the answers, but I'm not able to speak it in a very clear way, or I'm not able to think at that point of time. So these will be phases which you have to get along, right? And everywhere you will fail. And at the very last moment when you will feel कि यार कुछ हो ही नहीं रहा है, that is when you will get a job. That happens to the maximum people. जब लगेगा कि कुछ नहीं हो रहा है ना, तभी जाके जॉब लग जाएगी. मेरे साथ बिल्कुल ऐसे ही हुआ था. आई वाज लाइक ऑलमोस्ट कि 100 कंपनीज हो गई हैं, कुछ नहीं हो रहा है, अब तो टीसीएस ही जाना है. एंड आई वाज ओके, लाइक ठीक है, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. बट उसी समय आपको एक एक अपॉर्चुनिटी मिलेगी जहाँ पे इंटर्नशिप लगती है. इंटर्नशिप लगी और वहां पे भी मुझे लगता है कि जो मेरा इंटरव्यूअर था, ही वाज रिलेटिवली वेरी वेरी नाइस टू मी एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम. सो उन्होंने ये नहीं बोला कि यार ये पाइथन में फंक्शन लिखना है तेरे को. अब उन्होंने बोला गूगल कर ले. अगर वो गूगल कर ले नहीं बोलते ना, मेरे से नहीं होता. इसलिए मुझे लगता है कि इंटरव्यू लेना एक बहुत बड़ी आर्ट है. मतलब लोगों को आना चाहिए कि कैसे लेना है. जरूरी थोड़ी है कि मुझे सारे फंक्शन पता होंगे, बट अगर आप गूगल करके आंसर दे पा रहे हो तो उन्हें लगेगा नहीं भाई कर लेगा, यही तो काम है ना. तो थोड़ा सा लक चाहिए आपको, वो आई थिंक ऊपर वाला दे देगा विद टाइम. आपका काम है कि मैं यू कंसिस्टेंटली डू योर पार्ट, राइट? फेल कंसिस्टेंटली बट कीप ऑन इम्प्रूविंग. पहला पार्ट है जब जॉब में रिज्यूमे ही नहीं शॉर्टलिस्ट हो रहा है, मतलब रिज्यूमे गड़बड़ है, तो प्रोजेक्ट अच्छे से नहीं लिखे हैं या फिर रिज्यूमे में मैंने बहुत अच्छे से डिफाइन नहीं किया है. सो आई नीड टू इम्प्रूव दैट. देन कम्स द सेकेंड पार्ट. अब रिज्यूमे तो शॉर्टलिस्ट हो रहा है, बट कॉल्स आती है तो मैं कॉल्स कन्वर्ट ही नहीं कर पा रहा हूँ. तो फर्स्ट केस तो मैं सीक्वल ही नहीं अच्छा कर रहा हूँ, या फिर मुझे एक्सेल पूछा तो मैं एक्सेल नहीं कर पा रहा हूँ. आई हैव टू इम्प्रूव ऑन ईच एंड एवरी एस्पेक्ट, देन ओनली आई गेट अ जॉब. एंड दैट हैज टू हैपन वेर यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड कि एक एक लेवल चढ़ना है. यू नीड टू क्लाइंब वन स्टेप एट अ टाइम. एक बार में जॉब नहीं लगती है. And job is a very, I think, first job, especially out of campus, is difficult. It's not that easy, and it's especially I think now when I see the market trend, I feel it's a little hard on people who are just starting up now. But that's how it is, right? You can't really do much, but All you need to do is keep doing. Because I can see a lot of companies are now opening up. They have jobs. They are now getting some openings. Might be it's not the same as to what it was in 2019 or 20, but you still have a good chance, right? And you need to be ready for it. So you need to do everything that you have in your capability to to try it out in the very last moment. That's all in your control.
Great, great. Great, Gaurav. I think good discussion. I hope people will benefit from it. Hope to have another podcast with you in the future with some
Thanks a
other
lot. Gaurav.
topics. Right.
Great connecting with you, and
Thank
just
you,
love
Gaurav.
being
Thank
into
you
your
for
office.
coming.
Thanks a lot. Ankit. Thank you so much.